So what is ergonomics? It comes from the Greek word ergo meaning work, nomos meaning laws. And the idea is of ergonomics, the goal is to match the workplace. That can be either the workstation, the processes, the tools to fit the capabilities of the worker. And we look at all of these things when we do assessments. And it just encompasses a lot of different fields, just so people know. Biomechanics looks at joint forces, engineering, physics, design, biology, tissue tolerances, psychology. This is where the cognitive ergonomic stuff comes into play. Poor ergonomic design can lead to musculoskeletal injuries, which can lead to very disabling injuries, chronic pain, decreased productivity, lost work days, premature retirement in some cases, which we have seen, and insurance claims, obviously, WSIB, or other. And I put other because there are some workers in the province that are not covered under comp. For example, I'm doing some work right now with the dental hygienists in Ontario with the OHCOW. Some hygienists have compensation, but that's only if the dentist chooses to provide coverage for them. If you work in a bank, proper ergonomic design can eliminate or minimize the risk factors. A lot of times, especially when you think about driving, there's not a whole lot you can do about the fact that you have to sit. So in that case, we can't necessarily eliminate the risk factor of sitting, but we may be able to minimize some of the other risk factors, being the awkward postures, the static postures, the vibration. So that's the goal. So we do that by ensuring that there's equipment fit and proper equipment positioning, some adjustability, and in the case of the vehicle being the seat and other things, pedals, and just being aware of postures and the importance of taking breaks. So what are the risk factors? This is important so you know when we're talking about different things in ergonomics. These are the things when we do an assessment. This is the things that we are looking for to see if they're present in the job. And the big four, because it used to be the big three, they would say repetition, force, and awkward postures. But actually static postures is a real big one. And that usually used to fall under force, but I like to put it separate because it is a totally different thing. So we know what repetition is. Sitting in a truck or a car over time is repetitive. Force refers to how much force is occurring at the joint and that the muscle is having to generate. So it can refer to pushing, pulling, carrying, lifting. It also can refer to gripping. Static forces refers to, and force can either be dynamic. So if you're moving and walking, the muscles in your legs are working dynamically. They're contracting, relaxing. Static force is sitting, when you're not moving, but there's still force. And this is the, people think that, how can you get injured? You sit all day. How can you have a back injury? Well, sitting is one of the worst postures you can be in when you think about standing or walking or lying. So it's a static posture. Muscles are still having to contract. So that becomes really problematic, and I'll talk about it later why. Awkward postures. Right now, as I'm standing here, all of my joints are in what is considered neutral posture, meaning that the muscles are neither relaxed or contracted. If I flex my elbow, right now my bicep is contracted and my triceps are extended. They're stretching. So this is not neutral. This is neutral for the elbow. That's why when we're working, this isn't neutral. This is full elbow extension. Okay? So we try to get people, because the joint works there's not as much force around the joint when it is in neutral because there's no real muscle contraction. So we try to get people to work in as neutral a posture as possible. There's also, when you're talking about driving, one of the very big risk factors is vibration, and we'll talk about that. And contact stress. Contact stress relates to certain areas of the body are affected by contact stress. For example, when you're sitting and you're sitting in a chair that is too long, you can get contact stress to the back of your thighs. And if you feel back there, that area there's not a lot of fatty tissue. You can feel the tendons coming from your hamstrings. Your wrists, not a lot of fatty tissue there. Your hands, the tops of your feet. If you're in a plan and you're working in a line and you have to get up to get close enough to the line, you have to put your feet under something sharp, you can be exposed to contact stress on your feet. The tops, the shins, not a lot there. So that's another risk factor, and it's a risk factor related to driving, and we'll talk about why that is. So who are at risk? These are just all the different individuals, truck drivers, bus drivers, forklift, traveling salespeople. This also relates to people that have to travel for their jobs a lot. The ladies from WSIB are saying they're on the road quite a bit, as are we at times. There are times when we could be traveling quite a bit as well. Ambulance drivers, heavy equipment drivers, taxi limousine drivers, farmers, you know, when you're talking about driving tractors and combines all day in the summer, and driving and courier service people. So I got these statistics actually from an article from the States, so I actually converted the miles to kilometers. I had to get my calculator out. So on average, men drive 71 kilometers and women drive 55 kilometers each day. That's quite a bit.
We may have to translate them back for everyone that's from Windsor.
Oh, don't even do that. No, I'm not going back. Studies have found significant associations between driving and back problems. There's just really no question that that is a risk factor for back problems. And one study analysis for the possible reasons related to the reporting of low back pain found that long-term exposure from vibration when you're driving was among the highest risk factors for neck, back, and low back problems. Some typical problems that are associated with frequent driving: neck, back, and shoulder pain, cramps, pressure points, and pulse circulation in the legs and buttocks. And again, this can be related to, you know, having a seat pan, just sitting in itself, right, compresses. When you're walking, the blood goes down your legs when you're standing. It goes down the legs quite easy because you've got gravity helping it go down. But the blood doesn't come back up quite as easily. It actually likes to have the muscle pump effect to help it back up the legs. So when you're walking, it has that. Your calves and the muscles in your lower legs are contracting, so it helps to push the blood back up. When you're sitting, that's not happening. You're not getting that effect. And also, because your knees are bent, that makes it a little more difficult as well for the blood to get back up. And then if you have contact stress and pressure back there, it makes it even more difficult. So that's why it's really important. And their nerves are back there as well, so it can compress nerves. If you're a gentleman that likes to have his wallet in the back of his pants, in his back pocket, and sits on it all day long, that can lead to a couple of very serious problems. One is sciatica, and again, that can cause poor circulation in the legs. It can affect the blood vessels. Increased chance of low back injury from lifting immediately after driving, and we'll talk about that. And long-term potential for degeneration of spinal discs and disc herniations. So what activities increase the risk? Again, I got this from an article from the Occupational Health and Safety magazine, Canada, October 2000. It stated that driving 30 kilometers or more a day, you're 2 to 4 times risk of back problems, back pain. Truck driving, 4 times risk of disc ruptures. I didn't have enough coffee this morning. Actually, I think it's because I had too much. Car driving, 2 times risk of disc ruptures. Increased vibration. So you naturally get vibration from all of these, and they affect these risk factors. But if you have too much vibration, there's increased tension, fatigue, and pain. And driving a bus, back pain risk is increased. So the 2 main risk factors that I'm going to talk about today are sitting for long periods of time and whole body vibration, because these are the 2 main risk factors related to driving. So let's talk about sitting and talk about why is it that. And like I was saying earlier, standing, you're neutral. Your back is in a neutral posture. And what that means is you have this natural curvature in your spine. And when you have that curvature, all the vertebrae, which are the bones, all the vertebrae are nice and straight. And you have equal distribution of force onto the discs. The discs are what absorb the force. They're between the vertebrae. When you're standing, the forces that are going through your low back are also going through your legs. Your legs absorb. I mean, actually the largest muscles in your body are in your legs, your quadriceps, and they're there for a reason, and that's why. It's to absorb all that force. When you sit down, you lose that. Now you do not have the forced dissipation of the legs. Now the force is increased 50% by sitting properly. So, and that's why, because you've lost that force dissipation. If you have a good lumbar support, like on this chair, I have really good lumbar support. What that does is to help maintain some of that curvature so that the vertebrae try to stay as neutral, as straight as possible. So you're still getting equal distribution. If you don't have a good lumbar support, it is impossible to keep that curvature. You can't. You're going to flatten your back out. So now what happens is when you sit like that, the vertebrae are now flexed, because between each vertebrae, that's a joint. Each one of these is a joint. So they flex and extend and rotate. And so what happens when you do that, now the force distribution, half of the disc is trying to absorb all of that extra force. So now the forces that the disc is having to absorb are now another 50% approximately. So now it's gone up 100% of force in your back. But what also happens, it's not just the forces, but you have ligaments that attach vertebrae to vertebrae. Because again, it's a joint. You always have ligaments at a joint, and they stabilize your back. If you sit like that day after day after day, what happens is those ligaments are going to get stretched, and they're going to lose their elasticity, and they're not going to stabilize your back anymore. This is what has happened to me. I have loose ligaments. I have an unstable back. They diagnosed me with degenerative disc disease, but it's not. My discs are fine, but my ligaments are loose. And that's permanent now. Once you've done that, there's no going back. But what I can do now is to try and strengthen all of the low back muscles to compensate. But that still isn't, the ligaments are there for a reason. They're much stronger than the muscles and the tendons. They're a very strong tissue. So sitting is an awkward posture, and it's a static posture. You're not moving. But the misconception that people have is static does not mean not working. Okay, and we'll talk on the next slide about that. So I like to show this slide because it demonstrates what static force means. When you're just at rest, you're in neutral, the blood that is needed by the muscles equals the blood that is going in. If you have a dynamic effort, so if I start to walk, for example, my legs, the blood that's needed is still equaling the blood that's going in. It's just more, right? Because muscle contraction requires oxygen. You can't get oxygen if the muscle contracted. It has to contract and relax to allow the blood to go in. So it's equal again. If you have a static effort, the blood that's needed is not equaling the blood that's going in. So if I hold my arm out here and I hold it for 5 minutes, I don't know if I can hold it for 5 minutes. Let's say I hold it for 2 minutes. You're going to start to feel a burn. The muscles in my shoulder joint are staying contracted to hold my arm out there. But when it's contracted, there's no blood getting in. The blood vessels, the nerves are all getting pinched. You're going to start to feel a burn, and what the burn is lactic acid. A byproduct of muscle contraction is lactic acid. But the only way it can get out of the muscle is from blood flow. So that's what the burn is. So I can do this. I could do this for quite a while. I could sit here and move my arm down, which is dynamic, and it's that dynamic effort. But it's a static effort. And I try to tell people, you know, you don't get blood flow. The blood's what carries the oxygen, the nutrients, and takes away the bad stuff. So if you think about no blood flow in the muscle, what do you get? No oxygen. That just doesn't sound good. And it isn't good for the muscle tissue. That's where you can get damage. So, and as I was saying, it's a working position. Even though it's static, it's working. It's not void of muscle contraction. In fact, it's a lot of static high muscle contraction. But with sitting, it's only some muscles and not all. Therefore, some muscles are working constantly while others are doing nothing. We were designed, our bodies were designed to move. They were not designed to sit for long periods. So it's very hard on the discs and the ligaments, like I was saying, of the back, and it restricts blood circulation through the muscles. Therefore, you're going to get muscle fatigue, and eventually there's going to be damage. And again, this shows you, like I was doing in the chair, it shows you the different postures. I mean, the reason we sleep at night is because there's very minimal forces on our body, right? You're lying horizontally. And actually, they say, I think it is a ½ an inch you lose throughout the day. When you're standing and walking all day, you actually lose a ½ an inch in your height. And the reason for that is because the discs are getting compressed, and you're actually losing. You get that back. The discs fill up with fluid again during the night as you sleep. And that's, you know, and then sitting, if you're even compressing it more, you're increasing the forces. And actually, a forward bent posture is even worse. They say this is where forces are really high. They actually recommend when you're sitting to sit in more of a reclined position. We'll talk about that. So lifting after prolonged sitting. Actually, Jennifer, my co-op student, our co-op student, found this. I thought this was hilarious, the Healthy Back book. This is a real problem. And I do this myself sometimes, not even thinking. And I know if you think of people that do delivery, they're doing this all the time. They get out of their vehicles and they go and lift right away. It's very bad because you've already put your back in a mechanical inefficiency. You know, the discs have been compressed, the ligaments are all stretched out, you've been flexed. This is hip flexion, you've been flex, 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 flex the whole time. What you should do is when you get out of your vehicle is walk around a little bit, get some blood flowing back into those muscles that have been working statically, and do a little stretching. What I try to tell people, and I do this all the time even within an office environment, if you've been sitting and flex, you should stand up and stretch because these muscles have been shortened and these ones have been lengthened. So what you want to do is stretch the opposite when you've been sitting. So very important to not get out, not to jump out of your vehicle, like if you're in a truck. That's really bad to do. Get out slowly, move around a little bit, do a little bit of stretching, and then proceed to doing proper lifting, if possible. So I'm going to now talk about whole body vibration. What is it? It's transmitted through the back and the buttocks when you're sitting. NIOSH, which is the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, states that there is strong evidence, not just evidence, but strong evidence of an association between exposure to whole body vibration and low back disorders. And this is some of the things, the long-term effects of exposure to vibration: disc displacement, degenerative spinal changes, lumbar scoliosis is where the back starts to curve from side to side. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Intervertebral disc disease, herniated discs. A lot of times people, and this, I've heard this before where people say, you know, I got out of my vehicle or I've been sitting all day and then I go to bend over to pick something up and I feel this twinge, and this especially can happen if you go to lift something. Because again, the discs have been compressed, they're not ready to handle all of that forces, and this is when this can happen. And usually it's because over time, right, that you've been doing this. Also disorders of the gastrointestinal system and other systems within the body, internal organs, that vibration can also damage. The response to vibration depends on the frequency, and I'm not going to get a whole lot into this because it's kind of technical. I actually provided our fact sheet on whole body vibration. If you want to read about it a little bit more, there's more information in there. But the frequency is the hertz, so 1 hertz to 20 hertz. And I'm not even going to try and explain it because this isn't actually my area of expertise either. So acceleration, so that would be the magnitude. So if you were to measure it and you had oscillations, you're measuring the vibration, the magnitude would be how high the oscillation is. And obviously the length of time over time to the exposure. They actually have standards for vibration exposure. The ISO 2631 evaluation of human exposure to whole body vibration. And there's different limits. And the one we're interested in is the limit that's going to do damage. It's the health effects limits. And that exposure is 0.63 meters per second squared. When they measure vibration, they use accelerometers, and they measure it in 3 planes. They measure it from top to bottom, so as it would go through your body, from side to side this way, and from forward to back. So it's kind of called the X, Y, and Z. So you've got these 2 planes and then through the center. So it's the sum of all of those vibrations is where you get this. So they can actually measure it. We don't have the equipment here to measure it, but there are companies that have accelerometers that you can measure the exposure. Some research now is stating that the standards are actually not low enough, that there are still people that are having exposure to lower amounts are still, the studies are showing that they're still significantly exposed to risk factors. So I got this information from a study that was written in the Pulp and Paper Health and Safety Association, which is one of our joint organizations as well. The Ergonomics of Lift Trucks, and this is a document that we have available here. But it talks about what are some of the effects, the variables that can either increase or decrease your vibration. So you have a driver effect. The lighter it is, the lighter the driver, there's going to be increased vibration, and vice versa, heavier, decreased. Driving speed, the faster you go, the more vibration there is, as opposed to slow driving. Load effect, again, this is similar to the driver effect. The lighter load or no load, increased vibration. The heavier the load, decreased. Tire effect, a cushion tire, increased. Pneumatic, decreased. Engine effect, diesel versus electric. Diesel has increased vibration. Obviously the track surface effect, if you're driving on a rough paved surface, more vibration as opposed to smooth. The seat effect, they found that it was dependent on the type of tire that was used, so they didn't have. Although they do recommend seats that vibration reducing seats. But actually, they say you can still have that and still have quite a bit of vibration, and again, it's because there's so many other variables that play into that. So some ways you can reduce the effects of vibration, improve the vehicle suspension. This is really important in maintaining equipment properly, proper engineering of the seating, use of materials that can generate less vibration. I'm not exactly sure what that would be. Decrease the amount of, reduce your speed of travel. Increase your rest and recovery times between exposures if that's possible. And alternate tasks, like this might be more applicable to somebody in a plant if they do different things and they have that option where they can, instead of driving for maybe 4 hours and getting that all done and then doing something else, they should maybe be mixing it up. Okay, thank you. Modify the seat and control positions. Obviously having proper back support, because it's that combination of sitting and the vibration, right? So if you can at all make your sitting posture as good as possible, that's going to eliminate some of the effects of the vibration. The worse the more forces that are going through your low back, the more effect that the vibration is going to have on you. Reduce forward and sideways leaning of the trunk. The reason for this is because, again, when I was saying, if you're sitting if the vertebrae are flexed, now you've lost about 50%, right? Now it's only half of the disc. Well, now if you're sitting with your back straightened and you're sitting sideways a little bit, now you're actually even losing more surface area on the disc. So now the forces increase even more. This is why when you're lifting with a twisted flexed is extremely bad. And that's why, because now if you think about it, if you want to visualize, you've only got maybe a quarter of the disc that is absorbing all of that force.
Okay, so what we're going to discuss today is preparing your vehicle early, which is in September or October before we get the first snowfall, having a winter driving kit, the kind of tools you should have in your vehicle, how to prepare yourself before driving, did you ever think of that? The hazards of winter driving, what to do if you get stuck in a snowstorm, where to go to look for the road conditions in the wintertime, if there's somewhere you can call or look on the computer, and then, as Brenda mentioned, some follow-up resources. So the first thing to do is prepare your vehicle early before the snow comes. So you want to make sure that your car is in really good working order, so you want to check out things like the radiator, check out what's under the hood, the radiator, check your spark plugs. Really important is to check your tires. Make sure that you have 4 identical tires on your vehicle. Apparently, if you have 2 of one kind and 2 of another, it reduces your ability to drive really well, and it also reduces your fuel consumption. In your handouts, there's a handout that has information, more specific information about tires, and it also has some tire brands that are listed so that you can see exactly what kind of tires you have on your vehicle, because for me, tires are kind of fall into the mystical category. The next thing you want to ensure is that you have real good wiper blades on your vehicle. Spend the extra money, go to Canadian Tire and buy the deluxe ones, because we all have probably been in a circumstance where we're driving down the 401 and all of a sudden we can't see, and it's not the most opportune time for us to pull over. If you do get stuck like that and your driver's wiper blade goes, think about changing the passenger wiper blade over so that you have the good wiper blade on your side of the vehicle. Also make sure your heater and your defroster are working at all times, that your lights are all working in the front and the back, that your brakes are in really good condition, and make sure that your muffler and your exhaust are working and tightly fitted so that you don't set yourself up for carbon monoxide. And also make sure your battery is charged, and be aware that in cold weather that it decreases your battery power, so it's not going to work as well. Know how to boost your battery, ladies, and carry jumper cables, or look, I put bumper cables. I found that yesterday. Make sure that your ignition wires are good and that you don't have any cracks in your distributor caps. Keep all your windows and mirrors clean, and make sure, sometimes when it's bad weather we get into our vehicle and we don't think about checking our mirrors because we're kind of nervous about driving. But if someone else has been in the vehicle before, you make sure you do all the things that you normally do, like check your mirrors. And for those folks in the audience that are driving tractors, big transport trucks, it's important that you use the winter grade oil and not the light oil, because the winter grade oil is too thick on the fifth wheel that they have underneath the trucks. So, winter driving kit. Well, let's see. We've got one up here, courtesy of OHCOW, produced by our fearless leader Mark. And that's amazing. We have an umbrella. In this particular one, now winter driving kits are sort of in all shapes and sizes, and they have all different kinds of ingredients. So we'll show you what this particular one has inside of it. It's got an umbrella and a flashlight, and some rubberized gloves, a first aid kit, a pen knife, rope, bumper cables, and a nice warm black blanket. And this is what we're going to do a draw for at the end of the session today. Yes?
Isn't there also a pump for your tires?
Whoa.
Your tire pressure?
Oh, very good.
Oh,
Wow, that's definitely a winter driving kit and a guy gadget. Okay. So you can, if you want to, divide your winter driving kit up into two separate areas in your vehicle. You can have some in your vehicle with you and then some in the trunk. CAA suggests that you have your first aid kit with you inside, a flashlight, a blanket, and a road map. That makes sense. If anything happens, you get in a little fender bender and you might nick yourself or something, and you're in the snow. If you don't have to get out of your vehicle, if the weather's too bad, you don't have to get out. In the trunk of your car, you need a shovel, extra clothing like a hat and scarf, warm boots. Other things to keep in the back are some bottled water, high-energy food like granola bars, chocolate bars, and a call police sign that you can put in your window of your vehicle. Also, a real neat thing to have is a colored sort of banner that's made either out of plastic or cloth that you can pop out and put on your antenna so that if your car gets buried, people can see the cloth. I thought that was pretty neat. Fire extinguisher, bag of sand or salt or kitty litter, but make sure it's not the kind that dissolves with water.
Was that the clumping?
I don't know, just...
I think it's the clumping that doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah. Also traction mats, a roll of paper towels, and properly fitted tire chains.
Can we
So-
use this in Canada?
What's that?
Tire chain?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I used to live around London and there was vehicles with those on all the time.
Really?
You can also have windshield washer fluid as a backup in your vehicle. The last thing you want to have happen is to run out of it. You should check before you go to make sure that it's topped up. But I don't know if you've ever been in this experience I have, where I've gone through over half a container of it in my vehicle going through a bad storm on the 401. So always make sure you have backup, because you don't need to worry about that too. There's enough for you to deal with on the road. An extra snow brush and scraper just in case the one that you have in the vehicle breaks. Starter cables, gas line antifreeze, flares that you can put out around outside your vehicle if you get stuck, a tow chain or rope, a screwdriver, and tire gauge, and extra fuses. So how to prepare yourself before you head out on the road? Well, first of all, have a good plan, especially if you're going on a road trip to, say, London, or I hear Owen Sound's getting a big dump today, about 30 centimeters of snow or something. Avoid fatigue, so make sure that you're rested up before you hit the road. Don't go after you've stayed up all night or you've only got a couple of hours sleep. Be prepared. Check your road and weather updates. Find out what the road conditions are where you're going, and let someone know in the destination that you're going to, or where you are at, what time you plan to be there and the route that you plan to take, just in case you don't get there and someone needs to come looking for you. Wear warm and comfy clothes. If you want to wear snazzy shoes at work, wear the boots in the vehicle and bring your shoes into work with you, even if it's just cold outside. pre-warm your vehicle as well. One of the reasons to pre-warm your vehicle is you'll also be pre-warming your windshield, so that when you do go to put any of your windshield washer fluid on it, it won't freeze on there and you're driving like this. Never warm your vehicle up in the garage though, because then you're setting yourself up for carbon monoxide issues. Make sure you remove all the snow and ice from your vehicle. Wear sunglasses. Sometimes if it's snowing and the sun is bright, that sets up a whole other issue for you with trying to see. And if you have a cell phone, make sure that you bring it. So hazards of winter driving. Well, these are the 5 top hazards. Poor traction, decreased ability to stop on the road, starting and stopping issues, driving when it's slippery, and then either not being able to see or not being able to see other vehicles. So poor traction, what happens there is if you start off slow and easy, that's the best thing. Don't try and start and leave your position really quickly, and then that will also reduce the amount that you're spinning your wheels. In deep snow, for any of you that have ever driven in deep snow, it's good to try to angle your wheels one way and then angle them the other way so that you're creating a tread for a path for yourself. And when you're parking your vehicle, I learned this from doing a lot of, when I was a community nurse, going from house to house and getting stuck a few times. If you go back and forth in the spot a couple of times, you can weave yourself a place so that you can get out of it easily when you're going to leave, especially when you've got appointments and things. And also when you're pulling out, be light on the gas. You probably all know that. Just kind of ease out of your spot and then move gently out. If you try to go quickly, generally, I find, because I drove as a nurse around London, 2 ditches and 1 flower bed, all at 10 kilometers an hour. But the best thing to do is to drive slowly and drive gently. And if it takes more time to get somewhere, at least you're going to get there. Reduced ability to stop. The best thing to do is to leave a greater distance between the vehicles so that if you need to stop and your stopping time is slowed because of the wet or the ice on the road, that you have more time to do that. And also, if any of you drive a standard, it's really great if you're driving in 4th gear and then you gear down to 3rd and 2nd and to 1st. It's much easier on the car, and you have much more control of what way the vehicle's going. So black ice. Windsor seems to be really prone to this Windsor area because of our fluctuating temperatures. Did you get black ice out in Vancouver, Barry? You did, a coastal. It comes in the extreme cold, and it tends to hang out more on curves and in shaded areas. The reason for that is that the sun doesn't hit the shaded areas as soon as it hits the other areas. So where you're thinking that there won't be ice because the sun's out, think about that there's a possibility that it will be on bridges or areas that are shaded. It also is present in the late night or early morning. And when you look at the road will look black and shiny versus gray and white. So that's something else to pay attention to. So there's really a lot of things that you can look for and be in control of. I remember when I first started driving as a nurse on the road, I was very panicky during the winter, but as time went on and I got used to it, I was like, okay, I know this, I know this, I know this. So I was a lot more comfortable braking smoothly and gently. Braking. There is a handout in your package about braking. It's on some beige colored paper with the details on it, and it's sort of what you were talking about in terms of braking. We call it controlled braking, where you put your heel to the floor if you need to brake, not on an icy condition, but if you need to brake in other conditions. And what you do is you press your toes firmly towards the gas pedal, and then you don't completely lock the brakes. You just press it nice and slow. Now, if you just put your toes on it, what happens is, this is kind of in line with what Brenda's been talking about earlier, is the muscles up here, they don't have fine motor control, it's gross motor control, so you don't have as much control over it. So the tendency is more for you to lock your brakes, and then you're into a bigger problem. So if you put your heel on the floor and you push down, you have, why don't you try it all? Put your heel on the floor and push, and then try it like this and see the difference. Your toes are almost kind of dangly on the end versus having the control with your heel on the floor.
Now, would that be if you don't have ABS?
If you don't have ABS, that's correct, yeah. So skidding, try to gain control, take your foot off the brake and steer the vehicle in the desired direction. What if you have reduced ability to see and to be seen? In your handout I put in something about fog, because this area tends to be prone to fog, and also blizzards and whiteouts, so there's more detail there for you. So your personal vehicle, for sure you want to clean your windshield and windows, wipe off all your lights. Very important thing to do is to physically get out and wipe off your headlights and your brake lights and your tail lights. and clean all the snow off of your vehicle. How many times do you see a vehicle going down the road and they've got that big square on the top of the hood that's creeping down the top of the windshield? So clean off all the snow on your vehicle. Set yourself up to be the safest that you can possibly be. Control everything that you can control before you get out on the road. Heat your windshield, as I mentioned earlier, and run your heater and defroster a few minutes before starting out. Well, we all do that because it's so cold. Fog. Slow down. Tap your brakes as a warning sign to others so that they can see that you're going to be slowing down or there's something going on in front of you. Turn on your fog lights if you have them. Drive at a speed within the distance that you can see to stop. Pull off into a gas station or parking lot. Never, ever, ever, if possible, pull over to the side of the road. Because why? Other people might do that, or they think that you're driving with traffic and bang, bang, bang. You can have a chain reaction of tragedy or just car accidents. Blowing snow and whiteouts. Slow down. The big thing in winter driving is just slow down. Increase your following distance and try to get off the road when visibility is near zero. And again, it's the same situation. Don't pull off to the side of the road. Try to pull into a parking lot somewhere if you can. So what happens if you're stranded in a snowstorm and you have to pull over into the side of a lot, or you have to pull over into a farmer's field, or you pull off somewhere because you know that you just can't see anymore? Well, the first thing is to stay calm. If you think that you can't shovel yourself out of the situation that you're in, and you can't walk 100 yards from your vehicle to get help, stay with your vehicle. That's what they recommend. It's important, though, to get out of your vehicle, if you can get out of your vehicle, and check your tailpipe to make sure that you don't have snow in there, because if you have snow in there and you run your engine at all, you can have some carbon monoxide problems. The other thing is, if the wind is blowing this way, you don't want that wind blowing in the vehicle, but you might want to get some fresh air in the vehicle. Open the window up on the other side a crack, and that way you can get some fresh air in there. And it's suggested that you can run your engine about 10 minutes an hour. This is interesting. If you dial star OPP on your cell phone, it will connect you up with the closest OPP station. I didn't know that till I did this research here. Yeah, that's a good one, eh? Put your call police sign up in your window, turn on your flashing lights or set up your flares, put the cloth on the antenna, wear a hat and scarf, and bundle up in a blanket. And if there's someone else in the vehicle, snuggle up, because there's a lot more warmth when two people are close together versus being apart.